So, as part of IGN's coverage of Gears 5, Rod Ferguson did a short Q&A with some fans' questions. So I thought we would take a quick look and see what he said. Some of the stuff we already know, but there is some interesting little tidbits here. So let's dive in. So the first question basically asks the type of tile sets we'll be getting in Escape and how many different ones will be. So he's said this before, but Ralph Ferguson had said at launch there will be two major visual themes for tiles, mining and ventilation. The Escape trailer and Hive we showed at E3 has examples of tiles from both, but the majority of the unique content has yet to be experienced. Yeah, so everything they've showed so far kind of looks very similar, and that's what the worry was to me was that we weren't going to get a lot of different tile sets. So while the hives can be made in the map editor, and there are potentially endless amount of procedural hives we could get, in reality they're all probably going to look very, very similar. Now that's disappointing. Hopefully they can try out some different tile sets over time. But yeah, procedural doesn't kind of mean endless. Like, yeah, it's kind of disappointing to me. Okay, so the next question is what Gears gameplay mechanic was something your team wanted to modify, update, and why? What gameplay mechanic is considered untouchable and will never change, and why? The Coalition responds with Gears 4, the Coalition wanted to earn our fans' trust by showing that we could make a true Gears of War game. With Gears 5, we want to challenge player expectations, and that applies to gameplay mechanics as well. There are many core mechanics that we've improved upon in Gears 5. As an example, we've changed the accuracy model for shooting. In past games, the reticle bloom would determine how accurate your shots were, while in Gears 5, we've moved to a recoil-based system, where each weapon has a predictable recoil pattern that players can learn and master. Also, while the addition of the Warden's Breaker Mace and each character getting a combat knife, we've greatly improved upon the game's melee system. I don't know if any gameplay mechanic is considered untouchable, but certainly one of the most iconic is the Lancer Chainsaw, which is a great segue to our next question. So I think this is probably the biggest change mechanically that we're probably going to see in the game is that the reticle is completely different and all the weapons now have a different recoil. I think this is a good change. This is Would I get my hands on it, I can't really say too much, but it looks like it's different enough to where the gameplay will feel a little bit fresher because Gears 4 was a bit stale for me, so I'm happy that they're changing up a few things to kind of freshen it up and make it a bit more modern. We'll get to the next question now, which is another big change, which I think is a really, really good change. And the question is, have they made any changes to the chainsaw mechanics? I only use it in Gears 4, but yeah. The chainsaw is just as brutal and useful as ever, however, we have modified the controls. As we've moved all weapons' secondary attacks to hold on the right bumper on the default control schemes, this allows players to access all of their weapons' attack options without having to let go of the thumbsticks, allowing for greater control of both movement and attacks. So I love this change. This before you would have to hold B to rev the chainsaw and move with the left thumbstick. So it was really awkward to kind of move and chainsaw at the same time because you couldn't use the right thumbstick to aim. So now the way it's changed to hold right bumper is you can both move and aim at the same time. So this is going to make the chainsaw a lot more easier to use, say. So I think that's a really good change. And the next one, very quick, will crossplay return? Yes, Gears 5 will have crossplay between both Xbox and PC, so players can play how they want and where they want. I think it's going to work how Gears 4, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but I'm sure it'll work like Gears 4, where if you play with mouse and keyboard, you will only play with other mouse and keyboard users. At least in PvP, which means in Horde and probably Escape, you can play with console with controller users if you're mouse and keyboard. But the way it worked is if you plugged your controller into your PC and played with a controller, you could play with people on Xbox who were also using controller. So yeah, no changes there by the sounds of it. Okay, the next question says, how many maps will be available at launch and will future content be free? So the answer to this is a little bit weird. I think the person asking the question meant versus maps or horde maps, but the coalition answered with escape. So the coalition said, with Map Builder, the possibilities are endless as the community can build and share their hives to play through their custom lobby browser. There will be 4 escape hives at launch, with new hives releasing weekly after launch, all for free in both matchmaking and private matches. In Gears 5, our goal is to create a player-first experience when it comes to in-game content, and it starts with this. No season pass, no Gears packs, DLC maps are free for matchmaking and private play. Exclusive earnable content in our all-new Tour of Duty system. All store purchases are direct, no RNG, so you always know what you're going to get. Okay, so this is a lot of stuff we already knew. I think he meant versus maps, but the coalition answered in hives. So 4 hives at launch with new releasing every week. But the map editor, like I said, there's only 2 tile sets, so all the maps are going to look more or less the same. So yeah, it's not super exciting. The big news, which they've covered before, is the no season pass, no gear packs. So all maps are going to be free, which means you can play them matchmaking and privately. Before, if you had the season pass, you got all the maps early, but the only other advantage to having the season pass was that you could play the maps in private games, whereas you couldn't if you didn't have the season pass. And the new Tour of Duty system, the way it sounds with other interviews in this, it sounds like Battle Pass. The way Rod Ferguson described it in an interview was it'll give you challenges to meet and then you'll get rewards. So I think he meant like if you get a skin for the Nasher, or say Gears One's version of Cole, you would have to complete 5 games of versus, or get 3 multi-kills, or do X number of waves of horde, stuff like that, and then you would get the reward for that. That's what it sounded like, and so it sounds like a battle pass. And he says they're seasonal, so the Tour of Duty system will change over time, and there's no RNG, so thank God we don't have to open 100 packs just to get the character you want. You can just they'll show the character and they'll show how to get that character. Hopefully, that's the way it sounds like. So yeah, really good changes there. Okay. With multiplayer about to be shown off in the coming weeks, I was wondering if how you intended to ease new players into it. One of the biggest things with Gears is that it has a very steep learning curve, which at the highest levels is great, as it is fast and frantic, but with newbies end up bearing the brunt of that and just get washed out. I know a few people who enjoyed the campaign but ended up leaving the multiplayer as they couldn't compete. The coalition responds, listening to community feedback, we've implemented certain accessibility features to ease players into Gears 5. Features such as target lock toggle and the screen shake toggle on the beginner difficulty can get players comfortable with the title's fast and frantic gameplay. As well as new to Gears 5 is Bootcamp, which will be a practice ground to improve your skills. With our recently announced escape mode, players can start with a lower difficulty and work their way up. Once they get good, they can get fast and try for the leaderboards. So this is the new bootcamp they were talking about. They've showed it off on IGN before. And basically, it's just like a little tutorial phase. They had something similar in Gears of War 1. I can't remember what it was called, but it basically taught you all the rules to all the multiplayer modes. So it's pretty similar to that by the sounds of it. Hopefully, there's a Horde one as well, because I play a lot of Horde, and the amount of people who jump into Horde that don't know how to play the mode and then immediately jump out after a couple of rounds or whatever, or just pick up all the power and don't use it, or fight the scout for the power. So hopefully there's a boot camp for Horde as well to teach people how to play that mode, because that's the mode that desperately needs a tutorial phase, and it needs to be mandatory. You need to have to complete that tutorial to get into Horde. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but I hope that's what they do. Yeah, and one more question about the aiming reticles here. I noticed most old weapons, if not all, have new aiming reticles in Gears 5. Why did you decide to change them? And will players have the option to use the old ones from the previous games? And the Coalition responds, the changes to our aiming reticles are meant to improve the player experience. We have consulted some top esports players and community members to ensure these gunplay enhancements are best they can be. We will always look to build and listen to the community. We do not have the option to change the reticles from the current settings. This is fine. This is a huge gameplay. You can't just change things like that. Like having different reticles and different recoil dramatically changes how the guns feel, and you certainly can't do that with in a PvP mode. You can't have people change that in a PvP mode, because people will use whatever gives them an advantage, whereas everybody needs to be on the same playing field. So I'm okay with the new reticles. I think it's fine, like I said before. So let's move on. And the second last question is, how does the Terminator crossover work narratively speaking? Coalition responds, multiplayer mode has always given the team an opportunity to step outside of the canon, giving fans fun content and through a partnership with Terminator Dark Fate. That generally means that they like to put rainbow shit all over all the characters and all the guns. We're able to do just that. Note the collaboration is focused on multiplayer and there's no campaign crossover. Both Kate and Sarah Connor are both outsiders of wars they did not start. Both were forced to become major parts of it. Sarah's story is Kate's story, and we're excited to bring fans of both franchises together. Yeah, I'm okay with this. This is fine. They've done a lot worse. Like they had Run the Jewels in Gears 4. Like that to me was annoying. But at least Sarah Connor is a character from TV or from a movie. She's not, you know, a rap artist that's got into the game. So that's fine to me. I'm sure the reason they're doing this is because Terminator Dark Fate is probably bad, and they're trying to do as much marketing as they can for it. It's also in Ghost Recon Breakpoint for some reason. So yeah, I wouldn't think too much about it. So the last question doesn't really pertain to the game. It's just what's the funniest outtake you've ever heard from John DiMaggio when he's recovering dialogue. And I'll put the answer up on the screen here, but it's not really worth talking about too much as it doesn't really pertain to the game. But I'll put the answer up on screen anyway for a few seconds. Yeah, so that's it. The only other thing new that they have talked about recently was the inverted omen, because there's a lot of people who don't like the inverted omen, which I'll put up on the screen now, which it takes over way too much of the screen for me. The previous omen would come as you take damage, it would come up on the screen in the middle of the screen, and it would obscure your vision. And then for Gears 5, it's inverted. So the middle of the screen is fine. It's the rest of the screen that gets redder and redder to the point of where you can't see anything. I think this is a terrible change. I'm not a fan. I don't like anything that obscures the screen. Um, and for this to obscure like 70% of the screen when your target, the idea is that you can still see the target, right? So the middle of your screen's fine. Your target's not always in the middle of the screen. Sometimes you're getting shot from every different angle. So it's hard to see what you're getting shot from. I understand the need for this in versus mode as it's a counter to the shotgun because people would charge with the shotgun, and if you have a rifle, this gives you an advantage because it obscures their vision and keeps them at bay. So I understand for the need for it in versus, whereas in PvP, like in Horde or Escape now, or the campaign, it's not needed. You don't need to obscure 70% of the screen or roughly whatever it is. You don't need to do that. It's so archaic. It's so old. Like no games do this anymore. Absolutely none that I can think of obscure your vision like this anymore. Some highlight where you're getting hit from with red or your screen gets a little bit redder, but they don't obscure almost all of the screen. It's such an archaic form. I don't like it, but yeah. But that's it. That was the end of the Q&A anyway. It was just quick Q&A. We knew a lot of that info anyway. I just wanted to go through it with everyone. So what did you think? Let me know in the comments if you anything you like, you dislike about this Gears 5. Are you excited? What do you think of the inverted omen? What do you think of the map editor, stuff like that? And as always, thanks for watching, guys. Leave a like and comment if you can. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you enjoyed that, remember to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thanks, guys. Peace.